What if one of the restaurant world's renowned chefs used his platform not just to win competitions, but to confront the industry's addiction crisis head on and build a path for sober professionals?
Welcome to the Sober Life Rocks podcast. You may have made the decision not to drink alcohol, or at the very least, not at work-related events. Whether you've never been a drinker, are in recovery, or made a health-related decision, we see you, and you are not alone. In today's world, networking, socializing, and celebrations often happen over drinks, and the struggle can be real. Through this podcast, we're changing that narrative. We're here to create a community where individuals like you, who choose not to drink or drink less, can find camaraderie, support, and practical advice.
Welcome back to Sober Life Rocks, the podcast where we amplify bold and unapologetic voices in the sober movement. But before we dive in, I want to talk about something that's been on my mind. I recently went to a business retreat to help each other, lift each other up, and talk about best practices and things we could recommend to each other. You know, we get stuck when we're on our own, but together we lift each other up. And that's why we are hosting Amplify Sober Voices. This event is for sober thought leaders, speakers, writers, podcasters, coaches, influencers, really anyone who's ready to turn their sober story into serious impact. By gathering together, we can lift each other up and achieve even greater impact with collaborations and new tools. It's all happening on January 15th, 2026 in Orlando. Grab your ticket now at amplifysobervoices.com and join the leaders redefining what's possible. Now, my guest today is Jonathon Sawyer. He's a partner chef at the 50/50 Group and leads Kindling in Chicago, where food meets fire in truly unforgettable way. As a James Beard Award-winning chef, Jonathon is known for creating hospitality experiences that are inclusive, authentic, and deeply connected to the community. In our conversation today, Jonathon's going to share how sobriety has reshaped his leadership, why alcohol doesn't have to be at the center of success in the restaurant industry, and how creativity and connection can flourish when we lead with clarity. Jonathon, welcome to the program.
Hey, Margie, thank you so much for having me. Really glad to get to tell a little piece of my story today.
Absolutely. Well, with that, one of the things that I'm always fascinated by is the role that alcohol played in our lives when we were growing up.
Yeah, I mean, we only have 30 or 45 minutes here, but I could take up a lot. So, my family history is basically the entirety of my mother and really my father's and most of my mother's side, especially all the males. They're all afflicted with alcoholism. Some have died from related diseases. Both my brothers are alcoholics. One is in recovery and works a program similar to I do. The other one is a bit of a white knuckler atheist. But for all those that do, whatever. I was introduced to drugs and alcohol by my peers and my heroes. My brother gave me my first sort of dip of tobacco, cigarette, and beer all on the same fishing trip to Coe Lake in Berea, Ohio. And I was off to the races. I was ready for an escape. I was ready to not feel anything. I was ready to hide from the emotions of being a Midwestern teenager with parents that weren't around a ton. And, and I'm not faulting my parents. It's not a blame disparagement. It's just, that they did what they had to do to make the family successful and wouldn't be here without them. Anywho, you fast forward a little bit and I start to get in kitchens, and that's eventually where I would get caught with my first bag of weed is in the back of the Mad Cactus in Strongsville, Ohio by my mother as a 14-year-old, maybe a 15-year-old. Fast forward a little further. That's where cocaine is purchased from a kitchen manager who will leave nameless at the Hula Hands in Strongsville Mall. And, and then it was kind of like, all right, I'm reading, Tony Bourdain, and I'm reading, Kerouac or whoever. And I'm thinking these are manuals for how you be cool. This is how you become a chef in the world. You must do all this drugs and alcohol, and you must have sex with the bride at the wedding behind a dumpster of the restaurant you're working at in order to be somebody in this world. And And, you know, listen, I don't regret anything, right? And I'm glad my path brought me here, but I just didn't realize those were cautionary tales. I thought that was the rule book to get to where I am today. So I set off on, a sad mission of just trying to do it all.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in the restaurant industry until my mid 20s. And yeah, cocaine was everywhere.
Everywhere. Yeah.
Drinking was just an alternative to water.
Yeah.
I remember when the restaurant would close down, like it would just be a free for all.
Yeah, exactly.
And
I
we
mean,
were exhausted and stressed out and all the things.
yeah, yeah. We coined a term for it, and we called it kitchen coffee. And that was towards the end of service when you were given anything you wanted to drink in a coffee cup while you were cleaning your station.
Mm-hmm.
And there was, I don't know, I'm 45, 13. So there's 30 plus years or 27-ish plus years of addictive behaviors and addiction. And it most certainly vacillated. There were moments, as I got into college where it increased, and I failed out of college. And then I started culinary school. So I made up these rules to sort of slow down and take my career seriously. I had children young, so I really calmed down for a little while there. And then I thought I had the parenting thing all figured out and the restaurant owner thing all figured out. And I was like, oh, why don't I go back to having weed every once in a while, / every day, / all the time. And then, Adderall comes around and it becomes a prescription that goes from 10 to 20 to 30 to 60 to 90 to, triple digit milligrams every couple of days, just to sort of balance the recipe of the disassociative uppers and downers. And, it all kind of came to a head right before COVID. And sort of during COVID, it really became apparent I couldn't do this on my own. And I looked at my brother, who was decades-ish into his program, and I looked at some other people around me, one who had passed away, one who was in the hospital from drug and alcohol related symptoms. And I was like, I'm going to just try to figure this out on my own. So I gave myself a year of sort of, let's just call it sobriety adjacent white knuckle lifestyle, right? Very niche set of people we were. And then my father passed away, and, people who work a program, people who know rock bottoms, right? And that really was the darkest one for me. First drink happened at the funeral, and then before you know it, it was just all gas, no break. And everything was crumbling. I think, if you juxtapose the timeline of my career over top of everything I'm talking about, it's almost invisible. And that's maybe the next evolution of how we have this conversation. But when you talk about winning Food and Wine Best New Chef or James Beard Award or being on Food Network or publishing my first book, those are the sort of heights, the things as a young culinarian I dreamed of doing. And they were the saddest times personally for me. When I'm most, viable or successful, quote unquote, on the eyes of others, was the time I could not look myself in the mirror, was the time I could not understand God's will, was the time I could not understand what I do understand now. So anywho, the non sequitur of it was, after my dad passed, I hit rock bottom. I said, that's it. That's enough. And I checked myself into rehab. And then I did an out program, and here I am, 38 months and a week and a half into what is the happiest time of my life and the most personally viable version of myself I've ever been, from my wife, my kids, and myself.
Yeah. I mean, I can so relate to that achievement laced with misery. I remember, life was a lot of chaos when I was drinking. Self-imposed mostly, but not altogether. Life happens to everybody, right?
Yep.
And I remember people saying to me, like, you're so strong. I can't imagine, how do you do all this stuff? And I remember thinking in my own head, like, fuck you. You have no idea what a toll this takes on me.
Yeah. Yeah, we are the only ones in the entire world who ever experienced what we've experienced, right? And I used to joke that I only had ones and 11s. And then I realized how sad that actually was, right? And I would
Mm,
always sort of drink away the ones and hide from them. And I would always celebrate the 11s.
mm,
And then I realized like an absolutely ordinary life full of ordinary pleasures is really extraordinary, and, I really owe a lot, to my wife, to my family, to my chosen family, and to God, to where I am today. To be able to
mm.
wake up every morning and surrender my will and be able to look at myself in the mirror and be proud of myself, is something that I never thought. It's something I never thought I could do. Honestly, I never, you know, you think about your drinking thinking, and like one of my biggest fears was that my son would turn out to be like me. Right? It's such
Mm.
a weird thing to think about. And it's not just like, hey, I want my children to have better than me. It was just, I hated that version of myself so much, with such loathing and sadness. And uh, I couldn't see him being a version of me and me being happy with that.
Yeah,
And I most certainly still want him to be better than me. And I still want him to have the opportunity to do better than me. But I love this version of myself. And I would be absolutely, uh, thrilled if there were a version of me that he became.
that's amazing. I remember in early sobriety, you were talking about ones versus 11s. I remember in early sobriety praying for boredom.
Yeah.
I just wanted the madness to stop. And I didn't know any alternative between ones and 11s and boring. And you're
Right.
right. It comes to a place where eventually you get the fours and fives and you are delighted with them, and you get the sevens and eights and you're like, oh, this is the best. This is the gravy of life.
Yeah.
So, oh, what a beautiful thing. Hey, so I want to talk about, because the restaurant industry really is riddled with all of this stuff.
Mhm.
Talk to me about number one, how did you address with your own staff and your own peers that you had made this decision? And what was that like?
Yeah. I mean, I think when you talk about early sobriety, it most certainly brings up a lot of emotions, right? And there's from I can only speak for myself, and everything that I'm saying today is a singular expression of one person's experience. I'm not saying anyone else can be this or has this or has done this, but I'm sure most certainly everyone can empathize. But in the beginning, I was really terrified to go back to work. One of my big places of abuse was the commute to and from work. I literally took a soft ride on the subway or the L train and the metro train here in Chicago to just sort of get over the fear and the anxiety I had of going back into a place that was a big abuse place for me. And I kind of counted days in the beginning, which I know isn't necessarily the most positive way to do it, but it's just what it took for me to get to here today. And over the first, let's even call it a year, I kind of hid from it a little bit, or I would do like the mocktail thing, or I'd do the like Pellegrino with lime in social situations. I'd use every tactic of avoidance to be away from people that I used to, quote unquote, be around when I was using, or like I did a lot of the let's just get one day, I just got to get to my pillow tonight sober. That's it. That's all
Absolutely.
that's all I got to do is tonight. I need another, and I would literally count hours to myself. I'd look at my watch and I'd say like, right now I have another 12 hours. I got to be sober. And that's it. And
Hmm.
that's all I
Hmm.
know is I got to make it through these 12 hours. And then tomorrow the sleep starts again. Because if I think about next year, or I think about 6 months from now, or I think about when my son turns 21, that's when the anxiety kicks in. And when I think of
Hmm.
yesterday and 12 years ago, that's when the depression kicks in. But if I just focus right here on the slate that's in front of me, I can deal with it. And then I don't know, they're just a light switch kind of turned off when I hit year two. I felt like, I know it's vain of me to say, but like I listened to Robert Downey Jr. talk about his sobriety. And he really said it took 2 years for me to prove to people with my actions that I wasn't the person that I used to be, and I wasn't going to do the things that I used to do. And I feel like there's a distinction there, right? Like we've all I've said a lot of words, I've said a lot of apologies, and I understand that was a part of the chaos and the self-sabotage that used to be me, but everything is happening through actions now. And I don't know, something around that 2-year mark, maybe it was even the 18-month mark, made me want to be a little bit more honest with everybody that was in my circle. So I just started telling people that I was sober. And when people asked me if I want to drink, I just said no. And I wouldn't get deep into the story. I would just say, I'm happier the way that I am now. Or, I used to drink and I just don't anymore. I would just kind of graze over it. And then, TV started to ramp up and I started to think about where I was and as a chef and as someone who has a platform, maybe that's, a little larger than some others. And I thought about a younger version of myself. And I was like, I wish I knew early on that people were happy and sober and successful and sober and driven and sober and versions of chefs that I could be, that I could see myself in. So I started to whisper about
creating the new playbook.
Yeah. I mean, as I got sober, I searched out other sober chefs and sober adjacent chefs, and there's a ton of them, we can go on and on about it, and there's programs like Ben's Friends that are out there now, but I don't think that there was an opportunity to really hear from them back in the day. So that's when I started to whisper about it on TV shows. And then I had a really great year on quote unquote competition culinary TV. And as it started to ramp up, I was just like, I'm just gonna, when you're in these rooms and you're being produced and you're talking, you can't really put on an air, or I can't. I don't have the face for it, right? I can't pretend like I'm somebody else for TV and then pretend like I'm someone else for the restaurant and then pretend like I'm someone else for Instagram home. It's just a different degree of Chef Jonathon Sawyer. It is.
Mm-hmm.
And when they put the megaphone up to my personality, I was just like, I just want to talk about this. And they were like, why are you doing so good? And I was like, honestly, I trust myself more. Honestly, I practice more, and I started talking about my 24-hour belief in what I do every day in terms of meditation and prayer work and adult friendship, which I cannot talk about enough. Having a community around you, especially in these digital days, is the most important thing for every walk of life. But I think it's uniquely specific for those, adults. It's very easy for you to grow apart or not find new friendships. And it just got to be something that I really wanted to talk about and wanted to share with the world. And then,
which was the first time that you actually fully came out and talked about it? Which show was that?
I don't know. Honestly, because you do a lot of, right. Let's just pretend like we're TV producers and we're producing a guy's grocery games. There's probably 2 hours of biopack and in conversation and interview that I do for a show that ends up being an hour, 40 minutes of television, 25 of which are cooking, and 3 contestants share that last 15 of biopack and interview. Anyway, you do hours and hours of it. And I know that there's shows where I hinted at it or where I talked about where I wasn't a drinker anymore. But really, I think 24 and 24, the show I just won, Last Chef Standing on Food Network, was the first time that I was really shouting it from the rooftops, because I saw an opportunity and I saw a place that I really wanted to, I don't know, it just something clicked and I wanted to talk about it. And I wanted to show everybody how proud I was and maybe show some young people that this is the way that the majority of chefs can and will eventually live their lives.
Well, I have to say, just personally, I'm a fan of the show. I watched season 1, and as soon as this came on, I watched the second season. And in that moment, when you first started talking about it, my heart just swelled, because knowing my past with the restaurant industry and to have somebody like you just unapologetic and not downing yourself or having any stigma around this, just talked about it hey, this is my new superpower. And it was amazing. It was amazing. Yeah. But I know that probably not everybody had that reaction. So did you get some blowback?
Well, first, I got to just talk about that moment for a second, because, the brilliance of that show, and the thing I love about that show is, unlike let's say the Housewives, which is a great franchise and a fantastic thing and very entertaining TV. And I am guilty of watching it. There's a lot of drugs and alcohol involved. There's a lot of production involved. And there's a lot of deliberate pot stirring that's involved. But 24 and 24, everything that comes out, all the drama, all of the mistakes, all of the emotions, that's just from exhaustion. That just happens naturally. And when they asked me what I would do with the money if I won, it took I started weeping immediately.
Mm.
And I had to walk away from the stage, and I tried again and I failed. And I tried again. I don't know if it's failed. It's probably a too binary of a word. I couldn't control the tears of all, it was joy, of course, but it was just like, everything was just, it was just coming out. And then I was able to talk about my story and what I did with the money and what I'm doing with the money and what I'm going to continue to do with all of the winnings from any show that I do, put it all towards my foundation and try to make a small difference wherever I can. But I can't remember the point of the story that we were saying.
The question was, did you get blowback?
I think, of course. Anyone with a platform and opportunities as grand as I do gets blowback, quote unquote, right? And I think people that maybe misread the story of how I left Cleveland or how I filed for bankruptcy or all the money that I lost, they looked at that and they were just like, this guy's using an excuse. He's looking to excuse his actions of the past, many of which weren't. By saying this thing out loud and looking for absolution going forward. And that's most certainly not the truth. Right. And I think a younger, less evolved, less sober version of myself had very thin skin and would get very upset by those things. But I totally get it. I get how people are upset. I get how people are misinformed. And honestly, I used to just delete those comments and mark those people as spam, but I don't, your opinion is yours and you read who you read, and there's nothing I'm going to say today or tomorrow that's going to change your mind, So
isn't that so funny? Sometimes I see people put stuff on Facebook or whatever, and I'm like, I want to comment back to them, and I think to myself, are they going to receive that and go, "Wow, Margie, thank you for setting me straight"?
Yes, exactly, right. I'm trying to change you from my ego. You're commenting on mine for your ego, right? It's all getting in the way. And at the end of the day, it's just like, all right, God bless it. We're all here.
So before we move on to the foundation, which I absolutely want to get into, what kind of reaction did you get from your peers for that moment of being so open?
Yeah, I think the outcome and the opportunity to speak about my sobriety has brought a ton of chefs into the fold, tons of which we don't really name any names, but people that have been sober forever became closer friends of mine. People that are newly sober were like really happy to share their story, and people that are really curious about getting sober started reaching out. And I think that's the most gratifying. I mean, all three of those are super gratifying, but someone who's like, friends of mine for 18 years who I did a food and wine festival 2 years in a row now was like, I think I'm at the end, And so we just started talking on the phone, and we're going to continue to talk on the phone. And all I can do is sort of tell my truth. And if it inspires you to find a different version of your truth, great. And if it doesn't, I still want this friendship. I still crave, conversation and camaraderie with my peers, and I'm going to keep it going in that way. But one of the sort of habits I've really picked up from being sober is inviting people to meetings when I travel. So whether I'm flying to LA to film, or I'm in Santa Rosa to film with Guy Fieri, or I'm in New York to film with Bobby Flay's company Rock Shrimp, or I'm in South Beach Food and Wine Festival, I'm always finding meetings. And I would do that in the beginning of my sobriety. But I think inviting people that I know that are curious or that are in the program, that's really the greatest moments that I share. Not the festival limelight or the prep work, which I love all of that too. It's like the morning before, the morning after, we all find a meeting and we all are able to be even more vulnerable with each other than we are inside the combined, because we're in the, what we say here stays here, here,
Yeah. Amazing. So one last question before we get to the foundation.
Sure.
My story, it starts with that or in the middle of it, was that my ex-husband and I's best friend was a wine sales guy. And
Yep.
so he would bring, 6 bottles of wine, put the brown wrappers around, tell me what to cook. I would cook this gourmet meal and we would taste it, each of the different flights with the different types of food. And so by the time that I got divorced, I was cooking steak and mushroom sauce for my toddlers because I wanted to justify the art of having the wine by myself.
Mm.
So how do you as a chef navigate that whole wine and food pairing, because it is a really big deal?
Yeah. Wow. I'm so glad you brought that up. It's such an important topic. And for me, it was the justification for a ton of my abuse. A ton of my abuse. I have a dear friend who's a wine importer, and I went to tour, barrel tastings with him years and years and years in a row, where we'd go to 3 to 6 wineries per day. We'd fly into Barcelona. We'd go down through the south of Spain. We'd go through the top of Italy. We'd jump up the Rhone River, go back into France, and then I would leave. But it was something I really enjoyed, memories I cherished forever. But as I started to get quote unquote educated in wine, I started to get obsessive about wine, right? As an addict, I'm obsessed with everything, right? And there's only a few good obsessions that I have, right? Like I don't even keep games on my telephone anymore. I know myself, my willpower well enough to say, like, if as a commuter, I can't have a single game on my phone, whether it's Pokemon Go and I want to share that with my son, or it's spades and I love playing cards. None of it can be on an electronic device near me. I cannot resist the dopamine hit that it gives me. I just can't.
Me too.
I know I can't.
Me too.
I can't do it. But that being said, it went from something that was like part of my culinary education, right? They teach it in culinary school. I had a class, Wines 101, and then I wanted to be good at it. And then I wanted to be great at it. And then I wanted to have a huge cellar. And I swear I'll get to the point eventually, and then COVID hit and I want to drink my entire cellar because I have all of this fantastic wine I've been collecting for all these years as part of my culinary education. And I was coming up during the microbrewery boom, and I think we're more at a plateau now. So it was like, I need to know all these beers. Oh no, mixology is cool now. I need to have all these cocktails. So like, there's a never ending treadmill of alcohol that you need to know about as a chef, owner, operator, right? I don't know if you put the video, but like I'm putting air quotes around all of that. Right now, I'm a sober chef. I have nothing to do with the wine program in terms of taste. I have nothing to do with the cocktail program in terms of tasting it or the beer program. However, there's enough information out there and there's enough professionals out there where you can have a touch on that. You can make it sound and feel like a program that you are a part of without necessarily having to taste all of those things, right? I feel like I'm giving you a little bit of a hindsight answer, and that I most certainly know every appellation of Burgundy. I know a ton about Trent. Like there's a lot I know about, but you can get yourself to a place of education just through reading, or you can trust a professional to do it for you. I think those things are fine. I think the more terrifying part of this question, twofold, is number one, like we do as I do as an alcoholic obsessive, I use it to justify years and years of abuse. But as I look at the restaurant industry in the future and you understand the margins, which it's complicated, I get it. And everybody can skew any data they want to make it look the way they do. But at the end of the day, if your restaurant isn't a fast food restaurant or QSR or a unicorn, you need to have at least 50% of your sales come from alcohol, because you're making closer to, say, 18 to 32% margin profit on that alcohol, where on the food, you're making closer to 2% to 10%, right? And even less in certain places.
That's
too.
Shocking.
It's shocking. So if you look at restaurants and you look at the complexity of where we are as a society, I'm very happy that we are moving away from alcohol. I'm very happy that we're on a, what year is it, 2025? Almost a 6 year. Yeah. So a 4-year trend going on a 5-year trend of overall alcohol consumption, especially in the lower age groups, decreasing drastically, double digits.
Drastically.
Which is, as a sober person, as a person who believes in this, it's fantastic. As a restaurateur who has to make money in order to pay his employees, in order to keep the restaurant afloat, when I see my restaurant flip from 55% alcohol sales down to 45%, I see the profit go from, 12% to 1%. And then listen, there's a lot more factors than that. I'm oversimplifying it. Please blow this out of proportion. Anybody wants to know online, cost of goods are up, blah, blah, blah. That's all true. But there is a terrifying reality that if you're not a restaurant that serves 1,000 meals a day out of a small, no front of house service format, there may not be a way for you to make money in the future if it keeps going.
How does the alcohol-free wine and beer fit into that?
I think that's a great question. I think NA and sober adjacent cocktails, whether they're CBD or THC based, I think that's there's a reason, and kombucha and et cetera. They're the biggest growing beverage sales period in the world. And we're talking about the opposite of what we're talking about, where we're seeing 10 to 12% loss of volume or sales in alcohol. You're seeing 30 to 300% increases in those categories. You're seeing
can that slot into that decreased alcohol to keep the restaurants alive and serve the people that don't want to drink?
I don't know if there's a binary answer to that. Right. I think right now we're currently in a place where people that are good at it are kind of profiteering from it. Right. Like restaurants that know how to make a mocktail, they are putting that percentage closer to 1 or 2% cost. They're getting 90% margin on it.
$12 for lemonade with
right
rosemary with lavender. Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's okay. It's part of like the beginning of it before the market really figures out what it wants and what it wants to be. But I just don't see. I mean, listen, I can only speak for myself as an owner operator and as an alcoholic in recovery. I could buy a house on the amount of alcohol I used to drink at dinner with my wife, right? Like it's a joke that a dear friend of mine said that like he just never really drank, but he was like, my wife and I paid for our first house basically because I entertain for a living and I don't drink when I go out and I save this X amount of money. So I don't see myself, even as I am right now, ever buying a $500 bottle of NA sparkling wine. Right. Or a $200 2-ounce pour of rare NA whiskey. I'm using things that maybe don't exist.
Or having 6 glasses of NA wine.
Right. So I don't think there's a binary answer right now. And I don't think anybody has the answer right now. I just think everybody's hyper focused on what we're doing today and what the problem is. And I think the solution's listen, restaurants aren't going to close, right? We're not all going to be replaced by robots. Is the majority of restaurants that serve burgers on a flat top going to use a robot? They are. That's just the reality. I have a wood burning restaurant. I use a timer. I'm using quote unquote human robots for our burgers already. We take temperature of the cast iron. We take times based on the burgers and the resting, and that way it's perfect every time. That's what it's about. There's other things that don't quite work like that because we don't use cast iron over our wood fired for everything. But the portion of the workforce is going away, but restaurants will be here forever. And especially low end and high end restaurants will never go anywhere. There will always be a place for it. I think the middle tier is the part we could argue about, right? Like that, not necessarily the luxury splurge, not necessarily the everyday sustenance, but just sort of the entertainment part of our budget is I think what people argue about, of the belief that like as we get more digital, as we get more removed from society and our peers, things that are live, things that happen to us are going to increase. So I think that live music, live theater, live art, live street festivals, food, I think those forms of entertainment are just going to increase overall in revenue. Maybe not necessarily regularity, but I think people deep down and, we're anthropologically, we're meant to be with each other around in a community. And no matter how much we try to, or not we, no matter how much devices try to drive a wedge in between us and that, we can't operate without it. So I truly do believe there's always going to be a future for restaurants. There is no way that they're gonna go away.
Do you have some favorite alcohol-free wines?
I don't. Well, so true story about me. I actually don't do any cocktails, mocktails, or wines. Yeah, okay. I just prefer to drink great sparkling water or great bottled water. I do have I drink Vichy and Pellegrino are my two favorite sparkling waters. Vichy
Perfect.
is like the extreme Catalonian mineral, sulfury, crazy. If you've never had it and you like water, it's the most fascinating bottled water I've ever tasted. And Pellegrino is just it's just consistent. You can get everywhere, and I love it. And I drink it on
Yeah.
ice, and I don't need any other garnish. Now,
Well, that being said, I didn't have
yeah,
any NI drinks for
yeah,
18 years of my sobriety. I just started drinking NA options like 5, 6 years ago. So
yeah,
for sure, it's not something I would have ever done in my first 5 years, maybe even 10 years. It was too
yeah,
close, too
yeah.
close.
I think for me, selfishly or vainly, it's like the calories and the sugar that I waste on those. I'd rather be a slice of cake or an extra piece of steak, right?
That's fair.
As a not small man who's been in the restaurant world his entire life, I know what happens to me with a couple extra calories every day over the course of a year or 45 years.
That's totally fair.
But again, I do think that there's evolutions, especially inside of the brewing and vinification process, that have never been available before, right? I mean,
Mhm.
what Athletic does with their beers is crazy. I mean, they're dead ringers for what their alcoholic versions are. But for me,
Yeah.
my beverage replacement is honestly tea. I drink a ton of tea. I have 27 SKUs of tea, loose leaf tea in my house right now. And I probably would have more if I had a bigger house. I drink oolong every day. I drink green tea every day. I drink a pu'er every single day. And then that kind of pepper in some other teas as well.
Just because you have time.
Yeah. And listen, I believe in tea. And I think that the Blue Zones diets that study tea and study those that drink tea in community, there's a reason why all of them consume tea. I'm not saying I'm anti-coffee. I still have like a little espresso here and there, but I believe that all of the positive antioxidant and lycopene and things that are in tea, they add up over time. And if I'm going to drink,
Plus, one is good, more is better, right?
I actually did find myself Google searching how much caffeine is too much per day because I calculate the water I drink every day, and then about half of my water is tea, and I'm like, I wonder if I'm having too much caffeine. So
Yeah, I had to get off caffeine a couple of years ago. It's brutal, but now it's
yeah,
fine.
yeah,
Okay, the Sawyer Foundation. Tell me
yeah.
how you conceived of this, where it is today, and what the future looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, the future is unknown. It's really open, right? And I looked at something that I really love about my sobriety is helping others find it, whether they're friends or whether they're new in their sobriety. And I love to be a part of that. And to be honest, I really loved my time in rehab and my time in outpatient. I made friends there that I still talk to almost daily, if not weekly. And we're talking 38 months removed. And I think from my mother's teaching background, from being a chef and a mentor, from being a father, I really do like being I don't know, I don't want to say teacher, but I like being a part of people's
Mentor.
information systems. Yeah, mentor. And I found so much joy in doing that, there was a moment there when I was going back to work where I was like, I'd rather just be a social worker. I'd rather just work with people like me and just do this because I really do love it. And I love to be a part of it. So anyway, you fast forward, I still think about friends of mine that are sober. We still talk about like, oh, we're going to open a sober summer camp, or we're going to open up an arts-based or hospitality-based treatment center. And because what we deal with is slightly different than what regular people deal with. I mean, all of our problems are similar and they can all go through the same basic couple of step 4 emotions. We all know that, but there is a difference in terms of getting back to society. And, these thoughts still knock around, and I'm a creative. And when I had the opportunity to think about doing something positive and we got some winnings from a TV show, I said, we're going to start a foundation. And in the beginning, it's just going to be exploratory, and we're going to have the money somewhere safe, and we're going to start to grab other thought leaders and sober leaders inside of the industry. And we're going to push out this messaging initially, hopefully eliminating the stigma associated with alcoholism. Because I say addiction and alcoholism because I think it's hard for for me as an addict, it was hard for me to understand that addiction and alcoholism are the same thing. And when people replace the word addiction with alcoholism, it didn't register for me. It does now. I get it. The verbiage is universal, but as someone who was
But
so
you were looking for that
cocooned and so
little
scared,
out.
yeah, exactly. Like, what? I would just make sure that they're worse than me, and that means that I'm okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. The comparison part of it, right? So a big part of it is limiting the stigma inside of the industry and understanding that you can be, not can be, you can, there's a power and there's a superpower inside of being an alcoholic or an addict in recovery. And I wanted to give people resources to find that recovery for themselves, understanding the complexity of leaving a job, using FMLA to pause a job, using disability or unemployment to not go back to the job, understanding those, what are the good, quote unquote, treatment centers for people like us, or what are the, so putting together all that information is a sea of complexity, all of which I did myself, all of which I did in a very terrible and miraculous state. I thank God for ending up where I did. But I've talked to other people who are like ready to take the step and then too scared because of one of those factors: insurance, time off, facility costs, et cetera,
so overwhelming when your head's in a fog.
Yep. Yeah. So we want to be a resource to sort of have people find their path. And then we want to be a resource for people when they're coming out of that and they're ready to reintegrate into society and into the industry specifically, with just some pointers and some meetings and some conversations that you need to have and need to be a part of going forward. And then I think again, at the beginning, the dream is way bigger than that. It's the Sawyer Foundation is only 4 months into it. It's an infant right now. And as we gain sort of partners and we gain the opportunity, we most certainly are going to increase the messaging and the opportunities.
Yep. I love that so much. I was so fortunate. My parents gifted me with an intervention, and the interventionist, it was a very unusual one. It was very much more educational and supportive rather than confrontational. But in the end, he pulled me aside and I had this long list of, but I can't do it for these reasons. And the but list was all these things.
Yeah.
And he was able to walk me through each one of those and help me see that, no, it was going to be okay. And my kids weren't going to be taken away from me, and my job wasn't going to be lost, and everybody wasn't going to be looking at me as though I had, alien features.
Right.
But not everybody has that.
Yeah, I agree. And I was just saying that I remember I can look back at it now and say it's silly or stupid, but a genuine concern of mine is someone who's in the 1,000 concert club, right? And I love live music and live theater, and I'll take my kids and my family to anything. I don't care what it is. If there's live performance and there's communal experience, I'm there for it. But I said to one of my friends before I left, and I said to my wife, I don't know if I'm going to be able to enjoy music ever again. Right. And I said it I genuinely felt it. And he just laughed at me because he's, and my wife as well, because this isn't a problem that they have. And they're like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Pardon my language. No. I don't know what you're talking about.
For sure.
And like, as an addict, I planned the recipe of drugs and alcohol for every single show. It wasn't just like, oh, I'm going to go see a concert. It was like, oh no, I have all these things I'm going to do to make the concert, quote unquote, better. And now, probably 75 shows removed, I'm like, I appreciate music in a way that I never did before. It was just at Lollapalooza last 2 weeks ago with my family, 4 days in a row, one day individually with each of them. And it's like, but those things when you're in it are just so complicated and so intense and so silly. And if you could have a resource that could walk you through it, that's amazing.
I didn't know how I was going to enjoy food.
Right.
Honestly.
It must be 10:40. If the music goes on like that, it means the restaurant's about to open.
Okay. All right.
Sorry about that. Sorry.
No, it's all good. So I love that idea, and I cannot wait to see where the Sawyer Foundation goes. Like, I think industry specific programs like this are
Mhm.
important because we think that we're terminally unique in the first place. We
Yep.
think that the challenges that we have are unique to our industry.
Yep.
You don't know what it's like in XYZ industry. And whether that's true or not is irrelevant. The people who need to be reassured that they're going to still have a life after getting sober need to hear it from people within their own industry. So I think that's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, that's like the roundabout way that like you know, Bill W. and others are like, find those that you want to be, find people that you want to be like. And it was a roundabout way of being like, you got to find people inside of your same lifestyle that have done it and emulate what they did. And I think this is a wildly specific way to do that.
Mm-hmm. So I want to kind of wrap back around to the very beginning of this conversation when you
Sure.
talked about reading Bourdain and others and, having this pathway for success. What would you say to people coming into the industry now, who are either sober or don't drink for whatever reason, or sober-ish? What would you say to them as far as how they can be successful without leaning into the drinking and drug culture?
Wow. Yeah, that's a tough one, right? I think at the end of the day, what we're doing as products of a media-based society is we're selling stories, right? And everything that you read that lionizes drug addiction, alcoholism, it may or may not be a true story, but it's most certainly embellished in a way to sell more of whatever it is, whether it's a book or a magazine or a podcast or a TV show or a movie.
We
True or
love the
not true isn't the
outrageous.
question. Yes, exactly. Like, not to oversimplify, but if it bleeds, it leads. And all of
Mhm.
these things that maybe draw you towards wanting to do more of those, they're sales tools, and that's it. And I was foolish to believe that this was not cautionary tale, but this was the playbook to get to where I am today. And I do believe in working for your heroes and emulating your heroes, but I think a part of that has to be within the confines of what they do at the restaurant and around the restaurant, right? I think that there's people that are successful that use and good for them in a way that maybe I never could anymore. And
Well, I'll tell you,
yeah,
for me, one of the things was my jobs when I was in corporate life was always centered around wining and dining potential clients.
yep,
And so, I would take people out to some fancy place and I had the corporate credit card. It's not like I could leave early when it got uncomfortable. I
right.
had to stay till the bitter end.
Mhm.
Once I got out of that role, believe me, I was there for 45 minutes, and once it got sloppy, I was out. But I
Yeah,
feel as though I really still miss some of that bonding that happens in those times. I have a sense that some of the relationships are deeper than they are with me because they end up doing these crazy things together.
yeah.
So for somebody coming into the restaurant industry, is that a factor that they have to navigate?
I think those concerns feel real, but I think if you look at people like, I mean, I don't really want to name too many chefs, but there's a ton of us at the top that are super sober and we're still doing fine.
Mhm.
I don't want to give away anyone's anonymity. Maybe I'll say Andrew
No.
Zimmern. That's someone who's really open about it. But like,
Yep.
if you look at what I'm doing, if you look at what Andrew is doing in terms of the connectivity of the world and the media that we want to be on, we're doing it as sober people who aren't staying till 6 a.m. Right?
Right.
We're not. We're making, I don't know. I mean, I feel like there's a stat you can throw in there for like every one out of every 100 people who stay there late and still drink and drug with them. There's 99 of them that made asses out of themselves. Pardon my.
For
Do we
sure.
swear on this or no? I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
Okay. There's 99 out of 100 who have absolutely fucking embarrassed themselves, right?
Yeah,
And they
for
lost
sure.
the opportunity that they would have had if they were sober and presenting the best version of themselves, right? It's not about tricking someone into believing that you're entertaining through spending enough time with them that they see one good moment and only remember that moment. It's about being a true version of yourself. You can't act your way through competitive culinary competition. You just need to be a megaphone of yourself. And the best way to do that is to be the best version of yourself, which for me happens to be the sober version of myself.
Absolutely. I love that. And I'll finish my thought by just saying that while I do sometimes have that FOMO, I absolutely, when I play that tape forward, don't want to be in those rooms. I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
see people at their worst, and
Mm-hmm.
I want my sleep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
get up in the morning and I got stuff to do.
I mean, my wife and I joke, and we were like, we just always, whenever we're leaving, we're like, we just want to live forever. Like when we're drinking water, we're just like, we're joking because we don't. We believe in mortality, but we're like, why do you drink so much tea? Why do you drink so much water? Because I want to live forever. That's the joke we have. Why are you going home? Because I'm going to get 8 to 10 hours tonight, and I want to live forever. Like that's our inside joke.
I love it. Is there anything else that you would like to share that I haven't touched on?
Um, no, I think we did a great job today. I think it's rare that I tell sort of my addiction timeline on a platform like this. It was as anxious as I was to tell it, especially when you were like, we're going to start by telling that part of your life. I was like, oh shit, here we go. It's really nice to sort of remember that I did what I had to do to get myself here. And I'm thankful for that person, but I'm no longer him.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's not who we were, it's what we did.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I just want to thank you for the honor of you coming on this podcast. It just means so much to me because I really feel as though it is celebrities back before COVID that broke the ice for others to talk about it. And it continues to be people who have a platform that I think help normalize this.
Yeah.
When you choose to speak openly, it reminds me too how much courage it takes to stand in that truth,
Yeah.
but also how powerful it can be for the rest of us.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I think there's great sober voices out there. Dax Shepard is someone who I listen to almost daily. And I
Mhm.
love the way he processes as a father and a successful human being, but B, just like how vulnerable he is with his addiction with the entire world. And I cannot imagine how many people's lives he's affected positively, myself included, just from having the courage to be that way. It's really
That's
amazing.
right. That's
Yeah.
right. So, for those of you listening, I hope that Jonathan's story sparks you to think about your own story. What role does alcohol play in how you lead, how you create, how you connect? And if you've already chosen an alcohol free or alcohol curious lifestyle, where might your voice inspire someone else who's still struggling in silence? That's what Amplify Sober Voices is all about. It's sharing our stories so none of us has to walk this path alone. If you're ready to explore what sober leadership could look like for you, whether that's through writing or speaking or podcasting or mentoring others in your industry, join us at Amplify Sober Voices this January in Orlando. Honestly, you don't need as big a platform as Jonathan has to make a big impact. You just need your voice and the courage to use it. Learn more at amplifysobervoices.com and we will save you a seat. Thank you so much.
Thank you.